Good morning. Welcome everyone. I'm so glad that you've joined us here at Southtown. All of you in person, welcome. All of you online, welcome. As you can see, Jude and I are not here at Southtown. We're in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. We're here for two reasons. First, because it's Palm Sunday. And as we celebrate Palm Sunday, we are celebrating Jesus coming down the Mount of Olives on a donkey and riding right into Jerusalem. So here we're trying to make a setting similar to that, being in the Blue Ridge Mountains. You can see a mountain range off in the distance and the beautiful sky up here. It's a little chilly. Also, I got another peak going up here on my left. And it's just a gorgeous morning, beautiful sun shining in my face and the blue skies. Second reason why we're in Virginia, the Blue Ridge Mountains, is to celebrate our youngest daughter, Tava, as she's having her first year of university. We've been able to go to a few of her classes and hear these wise professors teach and train and equip. We've been able to go to different chapels where they've had guest speakers from around the world coming. Bob Goff was a guest speaker just last week. We've been able to watch a few of Tava's lacrosse games. The first game that we saw was against Duke. Duke is number 7th in the nation, and Liberty, Tava and her team, battled them all the way to the end, and Duke just barely won 8-7. In that game, Tava played 2 different shifts, about 2.5 minutes each. The next game, she played a lot more and she scored a goal. Oh, sorry, proud dad moment. Sorry, let's get back to Palm Sunday. But the reason why we're here in the Blue Ridge Mountains is to try to put us in the scene of Palm Sunday. So, question for you, question for me. Why hasn't Palm Sunday or Easter or this Passion Week that I want to call this morning and this week Victory Over Darkness Week? Why hasn't Palm Sunday and Good Friday and Easter been canceled? I mean, why hasn't it been removed from the history books? I mean, if you stop and think about it, over the years and decades, people have been trying to steer us away from what Palm Sunday and Easter are all about. Just think about chocolate and Easter bunny, chocolate and Easter baskets, chocolate and Easter eggs, chocolate and Easter egg hunts, chocolate. Can I say chocolate anymore? I think chocolate is a great distraction, great distractor. I know it is for my wife. I know some of you love coffee. I haven't grown to like the taste of coffee unless you put chocolate in it. But with all of those attempts, no one can cancel this Passion Week, Palm Sunday, Good Friday, Easter celebration that I'm going to entitle today and the rest of this week, Victory Over Darkness Week. Why? Because this week is the most important week in the history of the world. All of history before this week, when Jesus comes riding down the Mount of Olives on that donkey into Jerusalem, as then he does amazing teaching and loving and caring that week. And then as he goes to the cross on Friday and dies and is put in a tomb and then raises from the dead on the 3rd day, that week in history, every history before that all points and builds up to this week. And then from that week on, all of the rest of history is benefiting from this week, and we get to look back and celebrate this week because that week changes our lives. And the future new heaven and new earth that God's going to create is all dependent on this week. So no one can try to cancel Palm Sunday, Good Friday, or Easter because it's the most important week in the history of the world. And this morning we're going to be looking at Palm Sunday. The 4 biographers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, they all write about this historical experience of Jesus coming down the Mount of Olives and riding right into Jerusalem with this grand celebration of the people of Jerusalem celebrating Jesus. Now, what is this all about? And I'm just going to read a portion of Dr. Luke's rendition of this historical experience. I pick it up in verse 35. 2 disciples brought the unridden colt to Jesus. They threw their cloaks on the colt and put Jesus on it. As it went along, people spread their cloaks on the road. When Jesus came near the place where the road goes down the Mount of Olives, the whole crowd of disciples began joyfully to praise God in loud voices for all the miracles they had seen Jesus do. Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord, the people shouted and sang. Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest. Some of the Pharisees, the religious leaders in the crowd, said to Jesus, Teacher, rebuke your disciples. Do they know what they're stopping? They're saying. Jesus replied, I tell you, if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out. As Jesus approached Jerusalem and saw the city, he wept over it. I mean, this historical experience of Jesus is powerful and most important and life-changing for everybody. This morning, I'd just like us to think about 3 truths that come right out of this Palm Sunday experience. The first truth is the truth of what is Palm Sunday all about, the meaning of Palm Sunday. Second truth that I want us to think about is our conflicted inner desires that I have and that you have, that all of us have. The third idea and truth I want us to wrestle with are the beautiful and powerful characteristics that come right out of Palm Sunday. So those are the 3 truths. And if we grasp these 3 truths, you and I, and every human being on the planet will be affected deeply, and our life will benefit massively from these 3 truths. So, first truth, the meaning of Palm Sunday. What is the meaning of Palm Sunday all about? I mean, think about that a moment. Let's picture the scene of Palm Sunday. Jesus is at the Mount of Olives. Disciples went and got this unridden colt. Jesus got on that colt and he started riding that colt down the mountain, and the disciples and people from the city and the crowds came out of the city, and they laid cloaks and clothes down and branches and leaves down so that Jesus on this donkey riding right into this city. Can you picture that scene? That scene is a grand celebration scene for all nations. Throughout history, think about when there's one nation that is being attacked by another nation. When this nation over here finds about that king and his army and warriors, they leave the city, leaving the women and children and the elderly behind. Then they go out of their nation and they fight the other nation. And if this nation and king and army win, the king sends heralds back to their city saying, we've won. And as their king and the armies coming back, the men, the women, the children, and the elderly come out of the city, and they see their king riding on the prized warrior stallion with the rest of his army surrounding him, walking their horses, and in great celebration the city welcomes their king and their army. That's our king who went and fought for us, and he defeated the enemy so that we are free. And they're celebrating and having this grand entrance of their king coming into the city and celebrating victory over their enemy, celebrating now they have freedom again. They aren't going to get destroyed or enslaved. So here, nation after nation throughout history, that's a grand celebration. So this experience that Jesus has on Palm Sunday, riding on that beast, coming down the mountain into the city, and the people of the city coming and singing and cheering, that reveals that this person on that beast is king, and king of Jerusalem, king of the Hebrews, king of everybody. That's a powerful message that needs to be heard. And it's not just this experience that reveals this, but think of the crowd. The crowds come out, and what are they singing? What are they shouting? They're singing and they're shouting praises to God for their king. They're quoting Psalm 118. Psalm 118 is a song that they created when King David went with his army and defeated the evil nations, and then they rode into the city. They sang Psalm 118, celebrating God's victory through their King David. And that's what they're singing on Jesus. So the crowd declares Jesus as their king. And not only that, but prophecies. Zechariah, he's a prophet that lived a little over 500 years before this experience of Jesus riding in on this donkey down the Mount of Olives. About 520 or so years, God revealed to prophet Zechariah that the Messiah, the future coming king, would ride in on a donkey. Let me read Zechariah 9, verse 9. God reveals to this prophet, and he wants you to see and understand the Messiah, the King of Kings. This is who he is. It says, "Rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout, daughter Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you righteous. Your king comes to you victorious, lowly, and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey." I mean, here, God reveals over 300 predictions, prophecies about the coming Messiah, about the coming future conquering king who's going to come and defeat evil and set the people free and save the world. God reveals over 300 prophecies. Zechariah 9:9 about the Messiah, this King of Kings riding in on a donkey, is just one of them. So here, prophecy proves and predicts that Jesus is this king. We don't have time to go into all of this mathematical probability that proves that Jesus is the one who has fulfilled these. That's just amazing. That's a sermon for another time. So not only do we have the action revealing Jesus as king, not only do we have the crowd declaring Jesus as king and worshiping and celebrating Jesus as their king, but you have the prophecies predicting and proving Jesus as king. But there's more. Think of those religious leaders. The religious leaders, as they see the crowd going out, laying their cloaks and branches, and Jesus riding on this beast coming down, they know what the crowd is declaring, and they're saying, "Jesus, rebuke this crowd. Stop them from declaring you king." And Jesus looks at them and goes, "What?" And it's an interesting response. He says, if they stop communicating, if they stop cheering, if they stop singing and worshiping God, declaring me king, the rocks will stand up and start to sing and declare me as King of Kings. I mean, he is saying that if we humans don't declare Jesus as king because he rightfully is, then all of the rest of creation will stand up and sing and shout. Jesus responds to these religious leaders trying to correct the disciples and this massive crowd to say, "Don't declare him king. That's blasphemy." Jesus looks at them and just confirms what the crowd is doing and what God is declaring. So here, Palm Sunday, what is the meaning? The meaning of Palm Sunday is that the man on that beast coming down Mount Olives and riding right into Jerusalem in this victory celebration is the king. And he's not just a king, he is the king. He is the king that all of history before this week has been talking about, and God promising that he would come, the Messiah. Whoa, I mean, that's a powerful message. That is the meaning of Palm Sunday, that Jesus, whether you know it or not, whether we believe it or not, he literally is King of Kings. He is the Messiah that God promised to rescue the world. Now, this forces the 7.8 billion of us to really stop and think about who this Jesus is. We humans, we can't pick and choose, well, I like this about Jesus and I don't like this about Jesus. I mean, we have the freedom to do that, but this Palm Sunday message that Jesus is King of Kings, we can't devalue Jesus and say Jesus is just a great teacher, or Jesus is the massive, beautiful healer, or that Jesus is one who created a new religion. He's much more than that. He is the King of Kings. He is the one who is promised. So in that forces us to grapple and go, wait a minute. I can't just say, oh, Jesus is a great teacher. I have to grapple and wrestle. He's King of Kings. I can't devalue him. That's a huge challenge for us. Let's move to the second truth. This inner conflicting conflictive desires within us. There's this battle that goes on in your heart, in my heart, and the 7.8 billion of us who are alive right now, and all the people who have lived in the past, all the people who will live in the future. We have this inner battle. One is we want a king. We want a king like King David that goes out and fights for our enemies, against our enemies. We want a king to have victory over our enemies. We want a king that will come and set us free and unleash us to go live the life that we want to live. We all desire deep down a king. But we have this other desire. Once we're free by that king, we don't want a king telling us what we can and cannot do. I mean, we're Americans, aren't we? Or wherever we are, we're liberal. We don't want someone telling us what we can and cannot do. I mean, you stop and think about this. This is the original rebellion that is in the heart of Adam and Eve, and then that inner rebellion has been birthed in all of us humans ever since. God created the universe, created the earth, created everything in the earth. Then He created the home for Adam and Eve, the Garden of Eden. And then He said, look at all these trees and bushes of fruit and vegetables. I've created them for you to enjoy and eat, but there's one tree over there. You can't eat of that tree. If you eat of that tree, you will surely die. And what do Adam and Eve do? They have this rebellion in them. They said, we don't want some God, some leader, some creator telling us what we can and cannot do. And so they did what they wanted to do, and they ate of that fruit, and they broke. And selfish rebellion just exploded. And that's in you and me. Jude and I, we have 4 young adult kids. When they were coming out of that not able to talk, not barely able to communicate, and they're like 1.5, 2, 3, 4. We never trained them to be rebellious. We didn't bring them to a school of rebellion. We didn't say, okay, now you've got to figure out when we ask you to not cut your sister's hair, then what does our son do? Goes and cuts our sister's hair, his sister's hair. I mean, there's this natural rebellion in us. All of us, all 2, 3, 4-year-olds, parents and grandparents who say, don't do that. They have this natural rebellion. No one has to teach that. So there's this confliction within us. And when we think about that, yeah, we want a king, but we don't want a king telling us what we can and cannot do. I'm going to risk here, talk about our money. We don't want someone telling us what we can and cannot do with our money. Stop and think about this for a moment. If a billionaire comes to you and gives you $1 million and says, this $1 million is my $1 million, and I'm giving it to you, I'm trusting it to you, I'm hiring you to go and make as much money with that $1 million as you can, and I'm going to pay you 20% of whatever you make. Okay? I mean, that's a pretty good deal. So if you take that $1 million and let's say in the course of a year, you doubled it and you made a whole nother $1 million. So there's $2 million there. Well, then the owner of that $1 million, now $2 million, gives you $200,000 and he keeps $800,000. So now the owner has $1,800,000 and you have $200,000 for your work. That's a pretty darn good deal, don't you think? Now, the creator of the universe, the King of Kings, has said, I own everything. I created you. I gave your incredible mind and talents and abilities, and I'm giving you this massive opportunity to go and make a living, and it's all of mine because I created you and everything in this world. Go and make as much money as you can in order to serve and create this world to be a better place. And the King of Kings says, I want you to keep 90% and give me 10%. Now, that is a way better deal than just keeping 20%. To keep 90%? Okay, now, you're messing with me, Chris. Yeah, I am. But when we think about not wanting someone to tell us what we can and cannot do, when we talk about money, we really get this inner battle, the conflicting desires within us. Yes, we want a king to come and rescue us and defeat our enemies and to set us free. But we don't want a king to tell us what we can and cannot do, especially with our money. Interesting. Now, here's the truth. In this inner world conflict of wanting a king but not wanting a king, the reality is you and I and all 7.89 billion of us on planet, we do have a king. And we've set that king as our king. Have you evaluated who's your king? Think about this for a moment. What gives you most satisfaction? What makes you feel most important about yourself? How do you feel like you're significant and you're making a difference in this world? What makes you important? Whatever that is your king. So if a relationship defines you and makes you really feel good because you're in this romantic love relationship, you found your soulmate and you're living for your soulmate, well, that's your king. If your kids or your grandkids, that's what you're living for and gets you up and them energized, it makes you say, look at my kids, look at my grandkids, that's our king. Or if the ability to make money, the ability to work hard and do a great job, and all of a sudden we are successful and we have got a lot of accomplishments, that is who our king is. If we're really smart and intelligent, we can figure things out. Our intelligence, our talent, our possible good looks, all of these things, money, possessions, comfort, we need to evaluate. Who are you serving? Who is your king? All of us have a king, whether we make them our king or not, and we intellectually know that. We need to evaluate, who is it that is our king? So here, that helps us in this inner world battle. Yes, we want a king, but no, we don't want a king telling us what to do. Which leads us to the third truth of Palm Sunday that I want to highlight as the wind kind of picks up. Hopefully, I've got a little protection here. But the third truth are the beautiful and powerful characteristics of Jesus that come right out of Palm Sunday. I want to highlight 4 of them. 4 characteristics that are beautiful and powerful of Jesus. The first characteristic is this King Jesus is the most. Everyone say the most. I mean, think of this. If we have a king, if we want a king, but we don't want a king to tell us what to do, then we've got to evaluate who is our king. Are we declaring ourselves king? Are we declaring other things as our king? And here we need to evaluate Jesus is king. So what kind of king is he? That's what we're looking at with this third truth about his beautiful and powerful characteristics. So Jesus, he is the most. You see the crowd coming out of Jerusalem and they're singing praises. They're declaring Jesus as king. And it says in Luke, Dr. Luke records, they're doing this because of the miracles they've seen Jesus do. They saw Jesus have full power over storms and instantly calm them. They saw Jesus kick evil out of people and groups of people. They saw Jesus heal lepers and the sick. They saw Jesus actually raise people from the dead. They saw Jesus forgive. They came out worshiping him. Jesus is the most. Philippians chapter 2, Paul writes about that God, according to Jesus, Jesus is God, that Jesus is untouchable because he's God. But then he became a human and he becomes touchable. And then he is this servant on planet Earth because that's who he is. And then on the cross he becomes guilty for us. And then on the third day he rises from the dead, and then God takes him and ascends him to the right hand of God, the highest place in the universe. He is the most. He is the highest. He is the most powerful. He is the most authoritative. He is the most holy and just. He is the most loving and kind and gracious and merciful. He is the most. So that's the first characteristic that's beautiful and powerful about this king that could be your king, and he might be your king already. Second true characteristic of Jesus that comes out of this is, what beast is he riding in on? Is he riding in on the prize stallion warrior horse? No. He's riding in on the colt of a never-ridden donkey. I mean, he's riding on like a blue-collar vehicle, so to speak. Why? Because he's humble. Jesus, the most, the King of Kings, is a humble king. I mean, picture this. For the 3 years before Palm Sunday, he figuratively speaking, rode in on a donkey right into the lives of hurt, wounded, rejected people and all people. He went right into the lives of the lepers. He went up to a leper one day who should have turned and shouted, unclean, unclean, and turned and ran. But Jesus somehow in his look caused that leper not to move. And Jesus walked right up to that leper, and he put his hand on that leper who's massively contagious, who now Jesus should receive leprosy from him just by being in his presence and touching him. And then Jesus wraps his arms around him and gives him a hug. And then Jesus brings new dignity and new love and new acceptance to a man who's been outcast and kicked out of his family and community. And then Jesus, after all of that loving, he heals him. And then he sends that healed ex-leper right back to his family so that he could go and hug his wife and pick up his kids and go have fun and be the man, the husband, and the father that God created him to be. Jesus is a humble king that walks into our lives to bring healing. Think of the prostitutes and the addicts, the drunkards, the people addicted to sexual things and alcohol and drugs. They all called Jesus their friend because he's a humble king. No one is like that. No king is like that. Third characteristic, thinking about that, I know when I was going into middle school, Jesus walked into my life and he humbly saw all of my inner rebellion, and he said, I want to adopt you into my family. Will you receive me as your Savior and as your King? And I said, yes. I'll never forget that day when he did his miracle work of walking humbly into my life and loving and forgiving and healing me. And he's still doing that today. Third characteristic of Jesus, he's not only the most king, he's not only the humble king, but he's the unleashing king. Everyone say unleasher. Unleasher. Turn to the person, unleasher. What do you mean unleasher? Okay, what kind of colt donkey did Jesus ride in on? Colt, young donkey that's never been ridden. I think those of us who know, unridden horses, unridden donkeys, they're wild. And when a human being tries to get on that horse or that donkey, what happens? That horse tries to buck that rider off, tries to kick, starts to squeal and scream, get off me, but in his whatever. And then he tries to even turn and bite the rider. When Jesus got on that colt that's never been ridden, that's never been broken, that is as wild as possibly can be, that colt did not buck. That colt did not kick. That colt did not scream and squeal and try to bite Jesus. That colt was calm, and he took this load and walked right down the Mount of Olives, right into the Jerusalem in this grand celebration ceremony, because that colt, that donkey, that wild donkey knew that his creator was getting on his back. That colt knew that Jesus is the King of Kings, is the Messiah, is God in human flesh, is the one who said, let there be light. The one whose creator, that colt experienced Jesus unleashing him to become all that God created him to become, to be an animal to carry heavy loads to accomplish great things. It's like, let's get a cart and put a whole bunch of wood on that cart and put it on this donkey, and the donkey will bring it over so that we can build a new barn. It's going to be a great thing. God unleashed that donkey to carry the King of Kings right into Jerusalem. Jesus, the King of Kings, is an unleasher king. Yes, he will fight our enemy and defeat the evil outside of us and within us, and he will set us free. And then he's not one that wants to oppress us and lord over us. He wants to unleash us to become all he created us to be and to become. He's an unleasher. That's amazing. Fourth, beautiful and powerful characteristic of Jesus is substitute rescuer. This one, please write those two words down, substitute rescuer. This king is a substitute rescuer. Soak that in. What does that mean? It means Jesus wants to substitute his life for our life and our life for his life. That's why this week is so important. That's why he's fighting darkness and evil, is to offer substitute rescuing. Now, most people, we don't like the whole idea of an authoritative figure judging us. So many of us have rejected God because we don't want God judging us, and we don't want to think about Judgment Day someday. Again, this whole Judgment Day and God judging us causes us to remind us of the second truth of this inner conflict within us. We all want a judge. When injustice comes, when evil comes on our family or a loved one or people we care about, we scream out, "This is unjust. We need justice to come." So we have this desire. We want a judge to judge the evil that just took place and then to bring the consequences for that evil. But when it comes to judgment on us, we don't want anyone judging the injustices that we've done. So we have this inner conflict. But here, there is God, the Creator. That's kind of one of his big characteristics is to judge. And Jesus, this King of Kings, who is a substitute rescuer, he knows about that. And he says to you and to me, can I sit in your seat of judgment? Can I be the substitute rescuer? Can I come and sit in that judgment seat of yours? And if we say yes, he'll come and sit right next to us. And as he sits next to us, God does this miracle thing because of who Jesus is, how he lived a perfect life, how he died on the cross, and how he victoriously rose from the dead. He is able to do this substitution for us. So that when God sees my rebellion, my selfishness, he sees Jesus take that from me and put it in himself, and he's sitting next to me in this judgment seat, so to speak. And God then judges Jesus for Chris Reinertson's rebellion, selfishness, and sin. And God sees me and Chris Reinertson with Jesus's characteristics of purity, holiness, and perfection. And all of a sudden, God says, Jesus, you are guilty for Chris Reinertson's rebellion, selfishness, and sin. And God says to me, Chris Reinertson, you are loved and adopted into your family because you have Jesus characteristics. That's the substitute rescuer characteristic of Jesus that is like no other human being on the planet. That's amazing. Think about that a moment. Jesus wants to be judged for you and so that you wouldn't have to. You know John 3:16? One of the most famous passages in the Bible. It says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life." You know the next one? Verse 17, it says that God didn't send his Son into the world to condemn the world, to judge the world, but to save it. And those who receive the Son will not be condemned, but be saved and rescued. Jesus wants to be your substitute rescuer so that when you are judged, God sees Jesus in you, and God sees your rebelliousness and sin and selfishness in Jesus, and Jesus takes that judgment of yours and mine, and he experiences that pain and suffering on the cross. So as he's on that cross, our sin, our rebelliousness, our selfishness, all of the judgment that we deserve, Jesus takes the punishment for us, and he dies on our behalf so we don't have to. All of the just wrath, anger of God because of my rebelliousness, Jesus experiences that for me so that I don't have to. That's why Easter week, Passion Week, Victorious Over Darkness Week is the most important week, because Jesus is the most unique, beautiful, and powerful King of Kings. He is the most King. He is the humble King. He is the unleasher King. And He is the substitute rescuer King. Have you asked Jesus to be your substitute rescuer? If not, why not? Maybe today can be the day you ask Jesus, please ride humbly into my life. Be gentle and kind, but deal with all of my rebelliousness, selfishness, all the ways that I've hurt other people and belittled people and made myself more important, all my pride and ugliness and selfishness. Jesus, kindly come in. Kindly pay the price for my sin, my rebelliousness, my selfishness. Help me to be adopted in your family. Rescue me. Help me to experience being adopted into your family from this day forward. Maybe today can be the day for you. If you're not ready to do that, that's okay. Talk about this beautiful week of victory over darkness. Talk about who Jesus is with someone who knows Him and experience this. Don't just stop here. But those of us who've received Christ as our King of Kings, as our substitute rescuer, I challenge all of us, let's celebrate this week. Let's ask Jesus to humbly, kindly identify our inner conflict of how we're saying, yeah, we want you to defeat the evil and selfishness within us and our rebelliousness within us, but we wrestle with one or two areas where we don't want you to tell us what to do. Let's cooperate with Jesus and say, yeah, Jesus, I'm pushing you out of my life as King in this one or two or three areas. And let's ask for forgiveness. Let's ask that Jesus can unleash us to be more free and become even a healthier person for this world. Well, will you all stand with me so we can close in prayer as, again, we got another gust of wind up here. God, let me take my hat off. Whew. God, we just thank you for Easter week. We thank you for Victory Over Darkness week. We thank you for Palm Sunday. We thank you that you, Jesus, are the King of Kings. And we thank you that you are the most King. You are the humble King. You are the unleasher King. And you are the substitute rescuer King. Lord, help those of us who've received you as our King and substitute rescuer. Help us to celebrate and cooperate with you even more every single day. Those of us who've never asked you to be our substitute rescuer, give us the courage to ask you to do this. Come and be our King. Come and be our substitute. Come and you take the punishment for my rebellion, selfishness, and sin. Lord, I ask you to do that. Lord, help us to celebrate you. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks, everybody. God bless. Have a great day.